Welcome back to the deep dive. We all want to get to the heart of things quickly, to really grasp those big ideas without getting bogged down in the details, right?
Mm,
Well, today we're going deep on a book that's all about that very thing.
you bet. We're taking on Eckhart Tolle's The Power of Now, and we have a great chapter-by-chapter summary to guide us.
So for those who might not be familiar, could you give us a quick overview of what the power of now is all about?
Sure thing. At its core, The Power of Now is really a guide to spiritual enlightenment. It's about finding that inner peace, and it focuses a lot on mindfulness and being present in the moment. Basically, the idea is that by escaping our ego-driven thoughts, we can unlock a deeper level of well-being.
And that's exactly what we're aiming to do in this deep dive.
Absolutely. We want to take this summary and distill it down to the absolute essential insights.
Exactly. So we can understand Tolle's core teachings, and most importantly, how these ideas might actually be relevant to our listeners' everyday lives.
I like that, making it practical.
Absolutely. So let's jump right in, shall we?
Let's do it.
Okay, so the first chapter throws us a bit of a curveball right off the bat with this idea. You are not your mind.
Right into the deep end. I love it.
I know it's a powerful statement, but it kind of leaves you wondering, well, if I'm not my thoughts, then what am I?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And Tolle suggests that we've become so identified with the constant chatter of our minds, what he calls the egoic mind.
That's the voice in our head that never seems to shut up, right?
Exactly. And we mistakenly think that voice is our true self. We lie awake at night, replaying conversations, worrying about the future.
Oh, I know that feeling all too well.
That's the mind we're talking about. Tolle says that's not the real you.
Okay, so how do we start to separate ourselves from all that mental noise? Because it can get pretty overwhelming.
Well, the first step, according to the summary, is simply becoming aware of it.
Aware of the thoughts themselves.
Yes, just notice them. Imagine you're sitting on a sidewalk next to a busy street.
I can picture it.
Okay, good. The car's driving by. Those are your thoughts. They're constantly moving, different shapes and sizes.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
You are the observer on the sidewalk. You see the traffic, but you don't jump into every single car, right?
Right, of course not.
That's the idea. This act of observing creates a space between you and your thoughts.
It's like taking a step back.
Exactly. And in that space, that's where liberation begins. That's where you stop being controlled by every mental impulse.
So it's about recognizing that our thoughts aren't necessarily reality, they're just thoughts.
Exactly. It's not about silencing the mind completely, although that would be nice sometimes, wouldn't it?
Don't I know it?
But it's more about recognizing them for what they are. Just thoughts, not necessarily truths.
Okay, that makes sense. So, on to chapter 2.
Yeah, let's dive into chapter 2.
This one is called Consciousness, the Way Out of Pain, and it introduces this concept of the pain body. What exactly is this pain body? It sounds a little intimidating, honestly.
It does, a bit, but it becomes clearer when we remember that we're not our minds.
Oh, right. That's a good point.
So, the pain body is essentially this accumulation of all the negative emotions we've experienced and haven't really dealt with.
You mean like past hurts, disappointments, traumas, all that baggage?
Precisely. It's like this reservoir of unresolved emotional pain that we carry around with us.
And it's lurking beneath the surface, ready to pounce.
Yeah, almost like a separate entity, and it can get triggered in certain situations. It feeds on negativity and even tries to create drama to keep itself going.
That sounds almost insidious, like it has a life of its own.
In a way, it does, and here's where it gets really interesting. Tolle says that our resistance to the present moment actually adds to this pain body.
So the more we fight against what's happening, the more we fuel this pain.
Exactly. Our resistance creates new pain that layers onto that old accumulated pain body.
But isn't some resistance natural? I mean, when we're going through tough times, it's hard to just accept it.
Of course. It's a very human response. But Tolle suggests that by simply being present with the pain, observing it without judgment, we can actually start to heal it.
Really? Just by observing it, how does that work?
It's about acknowledging the pain, feeling it fully, but not getting lost in the story surrounding it, not letting it define you.
So instead of pushing it away, we let ourselves experience it. That seems counterintuitive.
It does, but the idea is that by resisting, we're actually amplifying the pain.
Interesting. So we move from resisting the pain to accepting it, which then leads to healing.
Exactly. Now, this brings us to chapter 3, which is all about moving deeply into the now. This is where Tolle really gets to the heart of his teaching.
And what is that?
Well, the core idea is really simple but profound.
Hmm.
The present moment, this very instant, is the only reality.
We hear that a lot, but it's hard to actually live in the moment, isn't it?
It is because our minds are constantly pulling us away. We're always dwelling on the past or worrying about the future.
True. So Tolle is saying that we need to shift our focus to the now.
Exactly. He says that time, as we normally think of it, is an illusion, a construct of the mind. The past is just memory, and the future is just anticipation. The only thing that's truly real is this present moment.
So all our anxiety about tomorrow, all our regrets about yesterday, they're all just happening in our heads.
They are, and they're robbing us of the peace that can be found in the present moment.
So how do we stop our minds from doing that?
Yeah.
From constantly time traveling?
Well, the summary suggests a very practical technique. Tolle says to focus on your senses.
What do you mean?
Pay attention to what you can see, hear, smell, taste, touch. Those are all experiences happening in the present moment.
Oh, I get it. It's about grounding ourselves in the physical reality of the now.
Yes. It's a simple way to bring your attention back to the present whenever your mind starts to wander.
That's a great tip. So moving on to chapter 4, we have mind strategies for avoiding the now. This sounds like our ego is back to its old tricks.
Oh, absolutely. The ego does not like the present moment.
Why not?
Because the ego needs time, specifically psychological time, to exist.
Meaning our thoughts about the past and the future.
Exactly. The ego thrives on problems, on creating a narrative of discontent. It gives the ego something to hold on to.
So if we're perfectly content in the present moment, the ego starts to dissolve.
You got it. It's almost like the ego needs to stir up trouble just to stay relevant.
And is very good at finding things to worry about. But seriously, is being focused on the future always a bad thing?
Not necessarily. It's natural to have goals and aspirations. But the problem is when we become so fixated on the future that we miss out on the present. Always thinking, when I achieve this, then I'll be happy. Or when that happens, then my life will be complete.
I've definitely fallen into that trap myself, always chasing the next thing.
We all do. But Tolle says that this constant focus on the future robs us of the joy that can be found in the present.
And it keeps us from appreciating what we already have.
Absolutely. The summary emphasizes this important point. Accept each moment fully before trying to change it.
Oh, that's good. Acceptance before action.
Exactly. Because resistance to the present moment, that's a hallmark of the ego. Acceptance doesn't mean you have to like what's happening.
But it's about acknowledging it.
Right. Acknowledging it as the starting point.
Okay, that makes sense. So in chapter 5, we get to the state of presence, which sounds pretty blissful. What exactly does it feel like to be in this state?
Well, the summary describes it as a state of consciousness where you're free from that constant stream of thoughts.
Free from the chatter.
Yes. You go beyond the limitations of the thinking mind. You become aware of a deeper level of being.
And what does that deeper level feel like?
The summary mentions qualities like stillness, alertness, and a deep inner peace.
That sounds amazing. So how do we get there? How do we cultivate this state of presence?
Well, the summary says that the first step is simply noticing when you've drifted away from it.
Noticing when our minds have wandered.
Yes. When you find yourself lost in thought or caught up in judgments and reactions, just notice it. And then gently guide your attention back to the present moment.
Back to the now.
Exactly. You can focus on your breath, the sensations in your body, the sounds around you, anything that brings you back to the present.
Sounds simple enough, but I imagine it takes practice.
It does, but it's a practice that can bring incredible rewards.
So let's talk about chapter 6, which introduces this idea of the inner body. This is new territory for me. How does connecting with our physical bodies help us become more present?
It's fascinating, really. Tolle says that our physical body exists only in the present moment. It's our anchor to the now.
Makes sense. Our bodies can't be in the past or the future. They're always right here, right now.
Exactly. So by consciously directing our attention to the sensations within our body, we shift our focus away from the mind and into a more direct experience of being.
So it's about feeling our bodies, not just thinking about them.
Precisely. It's about sensing the subtle energies flowing within us, the tingling, the warmth, the aliveness.
And how do we do that? What's the practice?
The summary mentions a technique called inner body awareness. It involves internally scanning your body and feeling the life energy that's pulsating within it.
That's interesting. So it's not about focusing on aches and pains, but on something deeper.
Exactly. It's about sensing the very essence of life that animates our physical form.
All right, on to chapter 7. This one is called Portals into the Unmanifested. What exactly is the unmanifested? It sounds pretty mysterious.
It is a bit mysterious. The summary describes it as the source of all creation, the underlying ground of being from which everything arises.
So it's like the ultimate reality, the source of everything.
You could say that. And Tolle says that through stillness and presence, we can access this unmanifested realm.
How so?
Well, he calls these portals, things like surrender, silence, stillness, and conscious breathing.
Okay, so these are practices that can help us connect with this deeper reality.
Exactly. By cultivating silence in our minds, becoming aware of the gaps between thoughts, we can glimpse this unmanifested realm.
And how does conscious breathing play into this?
Well, by focusing on our breath, we're anchoring ourselves in the present moment. And that stillness creates an opening to something larger than ourselves.
Wow. It's amazing how something as simple as our breath can be such a powerful tool. So let's move on to relationships. How does this idea of presence impact our interactions with others?
That's what Chapter 8 is all about, enlightened relationships.
Okay, let's hear it.
Well, the summary emphasizes that true relationships, the kind that bring deep fulfillment, are rooted in presence.
Not an ego.
Exactly, because the ego tends to use relationships to try and fill its own needs. It seeks validation, security, a sense of completeness.
And when those needs aren't met, that's when conflict arises.
Precisely. But when we approach relationships from a place of presence, we can connect with others on a much deeper, more authentic level.
So instead of trying to get something from the other person, we're simply being present with them.
Exactly. It's about seeing them as they are without judgment, without trying to change them.
It's about accepting them fully.
Yes, and just being present with them in the moment.
That's a beautiful way to approach relationships.
Yeah.
So now we come to Chapter 9, which offers a really interesting perspective. Beyond happiness and unhappiness, there is peace.
I love this chapter. It's so liberating.
Because we're so conditioned to chase happiness, aren't we? Always looking for the next thing that will make us happy.
It's the human condition. But Tolle suggests that true peace lies beyond the ups and downs of happiness and unhappiness.
So it's not about constantly striving to feel good.
No, it's about recognizing that happiness is fleeting. It depends on external factors that are constantly changing.
Right, things outside of our control.
Exactly. But Tolle says that there's a deeper peace that's always available to us, regardless of our circumstances.
And how do we tap into that peace?
By surrendering to the present moment. By accepting what is without resistance.
It's not about resignation, though, right?
No, it's not about giving up. It's about aligning ourselves with the flow of life. Trusting that everything is unfolding as it should.
That's a powerful concept. So Chapter 10 delves into this idea of surrender. But surrender often has negative connotations, doesn't it? It implies weakness or defeat.
I know, right? But Tolle's concept of surrender is very different.
How so?
Well, he says that surrender isn't about giving up on your external goals.
It's an internal process.
Exactly. It's about accepting what is happening internally without resistance.
So instead of fighting against our thoughts and feelings, we simply acknowledge them.
Precisely. It's about ceasing that internal struggle. And when we do that, we dissolve the ego's grip and connect with something much larger than ourselves.
And that connection brings peace.
Yes. And the summary encourages us to consciously choose surrender over resistance, especially in challenging situations.
That's easier said than done. But I see the wisdom in it. Okay, so we come to the final message of the book, which is quite beautiful, actually. The immediate possibility of awakening.
Yeah, that's a really powerful concept. Tolle is reminding us that enlightenment isn't some far-off goal.
It's available to us right now.
Yes. Every moment holds the potential for awakening.
So it's not about spending years meditating in a cave.
Well, meditation can certainly help, but Tolle says that awakening is simply the realization and embodiment of presence.
And presence is something we can cultivate in every moment.
Exactly. It's always available to us. We just have to choose it.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the power of now, I think the biggest takeaway is the incredible power of the present moment. By shifting our awareness to the now, we can unlock a level of peace and well-being that we may not have thought possible.
Absolutely. And it's not some complicated philosophy. The practices Tolle outlines are simple, yet incredibly profound. Observing our thoughts, connecting with our inner body, embracing the present moment. These are all things we can start doing today.
That's what I love about this book. It's so practical. So for our listeners out there, I encourage you to think about which of Tolle's ideas really resonated with you, what spoke to you on a deep level, and then think about how you can bring a little bit more presence into your own life, starting right now.
And as you go about your day, I want you to consider this. The next time you find yourself in a challenging situation, what would happen if you completely surrendered to the now? What new possibilities might emerge if you simply allowed yourself to be fully present with the experience, whatever it may be?
That's a great question to ponder. And on that note, we'll wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us.
Yep.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of big ideas.
Until then, be present.
And be well.